Hello and welcome to The Rightest Leftist with Nathan Ogilvie. This is a headlines episode where we look at a series of headlines, and I thought I was just going to do one today, but because it's on the topic of childcare, it's a review from my last video on that, which is now the most viewed video on this channel, and given my usual stats, went semi-viral. But we need to follow this up because there's been lots of developments. So for context, we're in the state of Victoria. That's where I live in Australia. And there was this huge scandal where a particular childcare worker was found to have abused multiple children. Thousands of children had to do testing for STDs. And now we're dealing with the fallout from the government. And I do want to move away from the focus on the monster that did that, and today look at the incompetence of the Victorian state government, which, based on what I think we're going to discuss today, needs to be voted out at the next election. So the first article here, and I've got a series to go through, I'm going to try and just do one article at a time, but because there's been so many developments since I last did my video, I'm going to just cover off the developments. So they were requested to publish details of enforcement actions against childcare operators. That was proposed by the Greens, and they failed to meet that 30-day deadline to publish 3 years worth of documents detailing the state's childcare crisis. The Parliament's upper house backed the motion by the Greens for them to produce those records, and then the government has now said it's carefully considering the request and will respond in due course, which is just frankly not good enough. The reason for this, I believe, it would be great to see the documents, that it'll come out that they've barely enforced any enforcement actions against these childcare providers. And that's the problem, because the information that we do have from some of the companies like Affinity Education, who had in New South Wales about 1,100 complaints made against it, only paid about $2,000 in fines, despite the thousands of complaints from parents and concerned people. This is not just Victoria-wide as well. This is happening in Queensland as well. There's been a childcare worker, this is just today, charged with the torture of a baby boy in a Queensland centre. And I know one of the issues that they're looking at in the childcare system is banning male workers. It's about 2 to 4%, so under 5% of the workforce in early childhood education are males. So it wouldn't decimate the workforce to ban males. But if we look here, this was a woman that did it. So it's not just a gendered problem. There are abusive people, of all genders, that are engaging in this. I'd highly recommend as well this article. There's the investigation that the ABC is doing, and I think that's amazing work investigating the childcare crisis and the betrayal of trust. One positive that's coming out of this is what I've been saying, is that it's the for-profit providers that are the problem, because not that public childcare systems would be perfect, but when the centres and those companies, some of them are on the share market, they're incentivized to make as much money as possible. So they're going to fill up their rooms with as many children as possible, pay the workers as little as possible, and not invest in the safety that they need to be investing in. So Labor, at least verbally, I don't think there's been any laws passed on this yet, but we will be following it. They want to do a one-strike threat to funding. And so what will happen is the Education Department will have the powers to cancel the childcare subsidy if a centre's standards fall, and then publicise that as well, which is really important. Public shaming needs to be part of this. And I'm still on the verge of publicly shaming the childcare centre my daughter attends and some of the things they've already done, which I'm going to hold back on for now. But it's the tap of funding that the government needs to turn off to these childcare centres. Because as I said in the last video, it's about $150 a day to have your child placed in the childcare centre. Parents do get a bit of that subsidy back based on their income, but these childcare centres are basically ATMs to the owners. So if they're private centres with only a few owners, you can bet that they're multi-millionaires. There's politicians like Peter Dutton's wife, who I did check after the last video, does own a number of childcare centres, so I don't know how many politicians are connected to the childcare centre industry. And the other thing too is if your child's sick and can't attend, like as I've said, I'm a psychologist and I claim Medicare, like my patients will get Medicare rebates from the fee. Well, if a client cancels on me, I don't get to claim that rebate, but childcare centres still get to claim that payment and the full payment, not just a subsidy. So the government needs to turn off the tap on these subsidies for these private providers, and that may actually incentivize them to actually do something about this. There is Jason Clare has been tasked. He's the education minister. They're using their powers to start to do something about this. And I've got actually an email from my local politician. Finally got back to me through a staffer, but it's still something. A few things at the top of the list there that I'll show you in the email too is use of CCTV, a national register of teachers, mandatory child safety training, which you think would already be mandatory, but at least the government's looking like it will act as well, and they're going to, let's hope, publish this bill that can strip funding from those childcare centres. The name of the monster from Queensland was Ashley Paul Griffith. I mentioned him in the last video, and there's been some investigation in Queensland. So they've got the Child Death Review Board reviewing the system responses to child sexual abuse in Queensland, and again, there's a lack of understanding. They've got a blue card system, which I believe is like their working with children check system, and they found a lot of faults with that, and they'll be putting in their report at the end of the year, which we'll cover as well. So this is Australia-wide issue, not just Victoria. Now, with Anthony Albanese, I got a couple of articles here. We'll do this one first. So Anthony Albanese has refused to call a royal commission into the childcare sector, and as you can see here too, with the title of this article, he wants childcare to be his legacy, but the problem is bigger than access. This is a great article too here that talks about the problematic profit incentive. Anthony Albanese is a little bit stuck because the problem is he ran on childcare. They asked him what would his legacy be, and Albanese said that his legacy would be the funding for childcare. But now that this scandal has come out in Victoria, and we're run by the Labor government in Victoria, the problem is it's disgusting what has been happening to these children, that our children are not safe and protected, and they are trying to acknowledge it and do stuff about it, but it happened under their watch from this incompetent government. And so he wants it to be part of his legacy, but it's probably going to turn out to be one of the biggest stains on his legacy if he does remain Prime Minister after the next election. I want to show the letter, the email here. It may be a bit small to read, but basically this was my local Labor member, and the recommendations or the actions they say they're going to take were a ban on the use of personal devices in childcare centres, with a ban implemented by the 26th of September. The register for educators working early childhood education by the end of August, which you'd think there should already be one. They're working on a national register, and they're commissioning an urgent review into the childcare safety in Victoria, and that's already started. But again, a little bit vague. I'm really hoping I can get this local member on the podcast and talk to them about my concerns as a parent and just as an everyday Aussie citizen who wants children to be protected. The government has to do much more than this. And I just want to point everyone's attention to, this is Jacinta Allen, our Premier in Victoria. She's a member of the Labor Party, took over from Daniel Andrews when he resigned in 2023, and turning out to be one of the most incompetent premiers we've ever had, even maybe more so than Daniel Andrews. And I really hope that they can turn this around quickly. I have no confidence that they will. And so any parents, I'm calling on to email your local politician. You can look up who they are online and reach out and send an email or a letter to your local politicians and let them know that we won't be standing for this as parents, and urgent reform has to happen. A royal commission needs to happen as well. And I think the biggest thing is these for-profit childcare centres need to feel the pain. They need to be either stripped of their registration or have that tap of funding turned off, where if this is going to happen in these childcare centres, they're not to get any more funding. Thank you for this video. It's a little negative, but I hope to provide some more positive content in the future. My name's Nathan Ogilvie. This is The Rightest Leftist, and we will be following the developments on this very closely, because we have a state election coming up next year, and I'll be heavily involved in making sure this Labor government don't get re-elected if this is the course they're going to take. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and all the good things, and we will talk again soon.